Hello and welcome to another episode of Island Learning Grenada. In today's episode, we will be discussing the achievements of the Grenada Revolution. The Grenada Revolution of 1979 to 1983 is known to be the most productive and successful period of governance of Grenada post independence. In this video, we will delve into the benefits or the successes of the Grenada Revolution during the period 1979 to 1983 under the People's Revolutionary Government led by Prime Minister Maurice Bishop and the New Jewel Movement. I'm your host, Crystal Simeon, owner of the brand Island Learning Grenada. Ensure to hit subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay updated on all our videos. Hit the notification bell to be notified each time we premiere a new video. Let's take a quick break and then be right back and get right into the learning. Stay tuned. Spice out, call Grenada. Join us every Sunday at 7 p.m. Grenadian time for our weekly educational program on Grenada's history, heritage, and culture. Stream live on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Island Learning Grenada. And we are back and we are not sticking for sure. Let's get straight into the uh, learning in terms of the Grenada Revolution and what were the successes and achievements of the Grenada Revolution. So let's start with this quote, raising levels of social consciousness, building a national ethos that encouraged a sense of community, organizing agrarian reform to benefit small farmers and farm workers, promoting literacy and adult education, fostering child and youth development, enacting legislation to promote gender justice, constructing low income housing and launching house repair programs, improving physical infrastructure, and in particular, the construction of an international airport, providing an environment that encourage popular democracy through parish and zonal councils. So, in that quote, in a nutshell, are some of the major achievements and successes of the Grenada Revolution. The Grenada Revolution would see the beginning of the construction of what we know as the Maurice Bishop International Airport. Construction began and was completed just after the end of the revolution in 1984. This project was in collaboration and through a technical as well as funding support provided by the Cuban government led by Fidel Castro. So, throughout the session today, we will dive into the benefits, break down some of those benefits as were outlined in this quote right now, and get into some more details about what were the achievements and successes of the Grenada Revolution. So let's first look at free education. Education was one of the promises made by Maurice Bishop and the NJM coming into the revolution or the overthrow of the Gary government and the start of socialism in Grenada through the People's Revolutionary Government. Free education. What did free education mean? Free education meant that all school children who were part of the education system in Grenada would be provided with free school books, free school uniforms, hot lunches, and no school fees. So that was the implementation of free education from as small as children entered pre-primary school at age 3 right up to age 18. They were provided with free education. Sociologists believe that education is one of the main avenues for the elimination of poverty in any country. Therefore, providing free education to students is one mechanism that has worked and continue to work today in the elimination against the fight to end poverty, especially in developing nations like Grenada. The People's Revolutionary Government implemented free education across the board, making education affordable and accessible to all Grenadian children who were eligible at the time to attend school. Free school books, free school uniforms, and no school fees. Just a bit of context. At the time, many secondary schools, including prestigious schools such as PBC, St. Joseph's Convent, St. George's, and Grenville, GBSS, Anglican High School, etc., all these schools had school fees. So parents had to pay school fees for their children to each year to go to these secondary schools. By eliminating the school fees, it made education free to those who attended secondary schools so that more children could attend as well as complete secondary school without that financial burden for parents to carry to pay school fees, especially for the children whose parents were agricultural labor workers. Many children, their parents worked on the nutmeg and cocoa estates or sold cocoa as nutmeg farmers or cocoa farmers, and providing opportunity for their children to attend secondary school free of cost was a significant achievement for the People's Revolutionary Government and one that was setting up the country for long term economic growth and development. Agriculture, agriculture reform. Agriculture under the People's Revolutionary Government, agriculture was one of the main focus areas. Agriculture um, wo- the growth of agriculture was seen in several different ways. One, the development and establishment of cooperatives. So cooperatives in which groups of farmers growing a particular crop would come together and form cooperatives, and cooperatives allow them to pool their resources and to work together better than they were before as individual farmers. The second development that came under agriculture reform was the diversification of agriculture, mainly in the non-traditional crops. So the traditional crops coming out of the early post-emancipation period, post 1838, was focused on nutmeg, focus on cocoa. There was still a little bit of coffee grown, but during the revolutionary period, really saw agricultural sector being diversified and the introduction of non-traditional crops such as the growth of bananas prepared for export to Europe and to throughout the Americas, right? So bananas became a key crop focused on with people, farmers growing fields of bananas, and those bananas were prepared for export out of Grenada. And that's just one example of a non traditional crop that flourished during the period of the Grenada Revolution. There was also the setting up of farm training schools. So the Maribo School, which is the school for agriculture located in Maribo in St. Andrews, was established during the period 1979 to 1983. The main purpose and intent of that school was to train young persons in agricultural practices to become better farmers and to improve agricultural produce for both local consumption and export. One of the main slogans of the People's Revolutionary Government was eat what you grow. The whole promotion of subsistence farming and subsistence living, in which Grenadians would grow crops and consume the crops grown as part of their diet, which meant less reliance on imported foods into Grenada. Healthcare. Another key focus area of the Grenada Revolution was that of healthcare. Healthcare was made free. The focus was on the provision of primary health care, so ensuring that healthcare was accessible in clinics across the island, as well as the hospital services were free of charge to Grenadians. Many Grenadians got the opportunity to go to Cuba for the first time in Grenada's history through the bilateral relationship between Grenada and Cuba to study medicine. Many of the early Cuban trained doctors, as we call them in Grenada, were educated during that 1979 period towards the late 80s and early 90s, driven by the efforts of the Grenada Revolution and its focus on healthcare. Doctors as well as dentists uh, were able to go to person, sorry, interested in becoming doctors or dentists had the opportunity to go to Cuba and study in the Cuban schools and the Cuban healthcare sector and to be able and then return to Grenada as Cuban trained doctors and Cuban trained dentists. There were also groups of women who went to Cuba to be trained as nurses too as well. So it was an important period in terms of the development of healthcare to improve on the training of health practitioners in Grenada, as well as providing free healthcare to Grenadian citizens. So lots of focus on healthcare, as and I said, the promotion of primary healthcare. Woman empowerment. So Woman empowerment was led by a branch of the People's Revolutionary Government called the National Women's Organization, or NWO. This group was led by Bernard Code's wife, Phyllis Code, as well as other women, including Valerie Cornwall, etc. So the whole objective of the National Women's Organization was to empower women. So women were empowered in terms of economic participation and development. Essentially, this whole notion about getting women out of the home and into the workforce was a key driving part of the work of the National Women's Organization. At the time, socially, many women were housewives. They stayed at home and looked after the children, and they did not participate in the workforce. But during the revolutionary period, through the work of the National Women's Organization, many women got the opportunity to enter the workforce, both at the government level as well as through the private sector. At the government level, women got opportunities to be employed as administrative clerks and clerical assistants in many ministries of government. In the private sector, women as well entered business places as doing administrative duties such as secretaries and receptionists, and those kinds of positions were created for women. So there was a huge drive to get women actively participating in the workforce and becoming um, economic contributors rather than just stay at home mothers and wives. The National Women's Organization also sought to educate and upskill the skills of women, ensure that women had access to education, that they were able to upskill their education and their skills to be able to participate in the workforce. So lots of training opportunities and programs were established and implemented to upskill women. The National Women's Organization throughout the period had over 8,000 registered female members who were actively participating in women's empowerment. The work of the National Women's Organization was key in keeping the momentum of the revolution going. So not only was they weren't separate out of the revolution, but worked alongside whatever the government was doing at the time in the different programs and initiatives. So it was a complementary aspect of the work of the People's Revolutionary Government. So that's women's empowerment. The construction of Grenada's first and today only international airport. So, one of the visionary projects of the People's Revolutionary Government, led by Maurice Bishop, was the construction of an international airport. Previous to that time, the airport was the Pearls Airport, located in Pearls, St. Andrews, and that was the only airport where small planes, landed, bringing passengers to Grenada, whether it was for tourists or for business. Maurice Bishop realized that in order to grow the tourism industry, it was just beginning to really take off. And one of the focus elements of the economic development of Grenada would be tourism. He thought it fitting that the construction of an international airport would help propel the tourism industry, bringing thousands of tourists to the shores of Grenada and really advancing our economic growth. Through a bilateral partnership with the Cuban government at the time, technical resources were provided to help in the construction of the airport, which began in the year 1980. So, construction of the airport began. It would not be completed until 1984, after the end of the revolution. But the history books note that the construction of the international airport was one of the major achievements and successes of the 1979 Grenada Revolution. It really did pave the way for the expansion of the local tourism sector and provided opportunity for export for boxes of bananas to leave Grenada on planes to head to the UK and Europe, etc., was all aided through the opening of the international airport called the Point Saline International Airport until 2009, when the airport was renamed after its visionary Maurice Bishop, and today we know it as the Maurice Bishop International Airport, or MBIA. Literacy. Coming into the year 1979, one of the areas of weaknesses of the Grenada population, especially among many, many adults who either did not finish primary school or never entered the doors of primary school, was adult literacy. Many adults could not read or write. They did not have the opportunity to attend primary school. Many of them, their parents just had them work on the nutmeg and cocoa estate, and they did not have the privilege to even attend a primary school. Others would have started primary school and ended up having to drop off early to either take care of younger siblings or to go to work to help their families earn monies to maintain the family. So adult literacy was a real problem. So the revolution sought to do mass education of adults to improve the literacy levels of adults in Grenada, both men and women. Centers, community centers, and schools across the island were used to hold sessions and classes to teach adults how to read and how to write their names. People were just signing their names with X's, and the revolution sought to eliminate that by teaching people how to write their names so that they can sign official government documents and government papers as a way to improve their lives and improve their circumstances. So adult literacy was also supported through the work of the National Women's Organization, who played a key role in ensuring women were literate as well as other people in society in ensuring that uh, they became literate as part of the the initiatives of the People's Revolutionary Government. It is estimated that thousands of persons were able to improve their literacy through the work of the adult literacy program put on by the People's Revolutionary Government. There was one group called the Center for Popular Education, or CPE. They also played a crucial role in helping to improve the literacy by providing, again, education and training to adults to help them to be able to learn to read and write. Teacher training. So teacher training previous to the uh, Grenada Revolution of 1979, Grenada did not have qualified teachers. They weren't qualified teachers. What existed in many of the primary schools were what were called student teachers. Students, when they became old enough at a certain age, they would start to become the teacher of the class, right? So many young girls, young women, when they got old enough, they moved from being a student into becoming a pupil teacher. That's what the old British system would call it, or a student teacher, and they would teach the class, right? They would teach the class, teach their younger colleagues or students like themselves. They would teach them. The Center for Popular Education was opened and established, and this provided the opportunity for thousands of teachers across Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique to be trained and become qualified teachers, qualified to teach in the classroom. So that center, the Center for Popular Education, was opened in 1980, and teachers were able to become trained formally and achieve their qualified status. Later, the Center for Popular Education became part of T.A. Marischal Community College, which was opened later in the 1980s, right? And that's where we have today the teacher training part of the term CC, but the root of it was the Center for Popular Education, or CPE, right? The revolution, as the picture shows, this slogan was also popular. Education is a right, not a privilege. And for many at the time, children going to school, education was a privilege. If your parents did not have money to pay the fees for you to attend secondary school, you did not go. So it was a privilege, right? Whereas the revolution sought to make education a right for every child to be educated. So that was huge. A way, as I said, to eliminate poverty. One of the avenues to eliminate poverty is through education. Development. So, another key focus area besides agriculture, healthcare, and education was that of community development and empowerment. So, the focus on community development and empowerment was about ensuring that communities would be able to self organize and develop their own selves and capacity. So, capacity building of community based organizations or community based groups. So two entities were created at the community level. One was what was called parish councils. So each parish had a parish council. So the parish of St. David, for example, would have a parish council. The parish of St. Patrick would have a parish council. So those parish councils had oversight over the entire parish and reported into the PRG government through their mechanism of governance. There were also the zonal council. So each parish, there were different zones, and there were the zonal councils who had oversight over the different zones within each parish. So that was a second layer of community structure and governance, to have zonal councils responsible for oversight of the zones that were created. Through the zonal councils and parish councils, there were community-based initiatives and activities which sought to empower communities to really uplift themselves, develop themselves, and move communities forward. Communities were able to actively participate in economic planning and management for the growth and development of individual communities. And as I said, these zonal councils and these parish councils, they fed into the bigger governance structure of the People's Revolutionary Government, allowing the work being done at the parish level or the zonal level to feed into the work of the government and also in the budget planning process. Again, the PRG government is noted for the whole introduction of what is called in today in government fiscal planning. That was really the brainchild of Bernard Code, who was the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Development, and Planning. He introduced and implemented this whole concept of fiscal planning, each ministry doing a fiscal plan and having a budget to support planned works or planning activities. So the community level work fed into the broader fiscal planning and fiscal budgeting process led by the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development, and Planning. And lastly, and most importantly, is the birth of the National Insurance Scheme. So the National Insurance Scheme was started as a direct result of the People's Revolutionary Government. The NIS began on April 4th, 1983. That's the day that the doors to the NIS was officially opened, but the work to establish the NIS has started from the period 1979 right up to 1983. The National Insurance Scheme is an example of a social security organization. Its whole intention is to provide social security for workers, and social security include maternity benefits, so maternity benefits, meaning that women could have their children or their babies and return to work. So the whole 3 month maternity leave that started because of the introduction of NIS. Previous to 1979, if where there was no maternity benefit, women who were unmarried, yes, if women were unmarried and they conceived and delivered a baby, they lost their job, right? They could not return to the workforce, right? With the group both of well, before NIS, but in 1979, firstly, the law changed, which then now allowed women who were unmarried to keep their jobs, so to go home, have their babies, and return to work, right? So that they no longer lost their job security because they were not married. In 1983 now, the maternity benefits allowed for women to go home, have their babies, get paid, and still return to work, right? So that's the maternity benefit. Also, sick leave, so that you could get paid sick leave. You could be sick and get paid by your employer. Employment and injury. If you're injured on the job, you get compensated for that injury on the job. And then pension. So pension benefit that as you work, you gathering pension, and that pension is partly contributed by your employer, and the next part is provided by NIS through their insurance scheme. So the birth of NIS was the introduction of that social security um, framework and structure for workers. It sought to give workers protection in areas that they did not have protection before, and was sought after as a way to improve the lives of working class people. Again, part of the philosophy of the People's Revolutionary Government was the improvement of the lives of working class people. When Maurice Bishop and his comrades under the Neutral Movement established not the PRG, but the NJM, they came together and began working to build a vision and eventually led to the events of March 13, 1979. It was all a focus about improving the lives of working class people. Many people at the time were working for very low wages. They did not have many benefits or rights and those sorts of things. So the revolution was intended to significantly improve their lives. And the achievements of the revolution, um, the beneficiaries of the achievements of the revolution is really was really the working class people across Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique who were able to access education for their children free of cost, access health care, access to benefits to the worker, the employer, the ability to learn to read and write and improve their skills. There was also lots of skills training done, and then women to be able to actively participate in the workforce. Those were all major achievements and successes of the Grenada Revolution from 1979 to 1983. So just to wrap up, the Grenada Revolution still remains today one of the most productive periods in Grenada's history from a social and economic perspective. This video just provides a snapshot or snippet into some of the highlights of achievements of the Grenada Revolution from 1979 to 1983. Thank you very much for viewing this video. It was a pleasure to share the information with you. Ensure that you hit the subscribe button and subscribe to our channel, Island Learning Grenada. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, Island Learning Grenada. Thank you. Bye.